Shabba. What? Good day. Happy Thursday, the 9th of July. I have a delayed presentation for you, scribes, initiates and famalan. I would like to just share this into the .com and Facebook. I can't find, here we go. Rights, entitlement, law, crimes, offences and rules. That's quite a mouthful. Each one of those areas is highly complex and in-depth, but we're going to skirt around and on top of. If you search for Chisholm versus Georgia, that's an American bit of case law there I'd like you to look at, make a note of for the thumbnail. Okay, yeah. I believe I am muted, so just let me go to the usual places and share. And then we will begin. You will need your wits about you. I have some notes and I have a lot of tabs open to go through. So good day, welcome, thank you. And bear with me while I announce we're having a chat. Still got Mr. Wobbly. It's happening today at 4 PM. I'm having an extraction. I'm Man David. So next time you see me on this window box, special purpose vehicle, you will see me as a pirate. Alright. I know there's many out there that are in pain. Hospitals, treatment, emergency services, dental care, health, emergency issues that have been put to the side whilst we working out what be going on and how to do it. The crass remarks from the Prime Minister need to be touched upon before we proceed. You got anything in the news that's concerned you, worried you? I'd like them comments if you wouldn't mind. China and its state powers. China, we're watching. Hong Kong, Shanghai, Beijing, the laws that are being passed there. Okay, we'll encapsulate them with the topic today. We've got some ancient gnosis from in antiquities to bring to you. I've accidentally discovered that all is not atum. What? I need Santos to come back and have a chat. I would require to elaborate further. Egypt at the minute, ancient Egypt, Kem, the Black Lands, they are having a renaissance of themselves. There's an amazing amount of information coming out, and I seem to have found a channel that's coined a new word, a pyramidiot. A pyramidiates, yes. And Aten, my subsequent coverages of the lineages of the dynasties from Egypt, we're going to look at power, rights, entitlements, Akhenaten, Anukharten. It does get said wrong by me with my dyslexia, so Anukharten, okay, he was the one of the Egyptian, we'll say, pharaohs, deities, gods, that founded the pure religion. I'm not covering that today, but just to give you an idea of where we're going to expand upon, you may have seen the presentation of ancient Egyptian lineage and history from many channels at the minute. I have got some publications and emails and new works and writings to consider. Aten, Akhenaten, having a fascination with the golden ball in the sky there, the sun. Before we had this monotheistic, one, God, monotheistic worship regime here. And before Akhenaten founded the pure religion, it's been studied and heralded as a pure religion, the study of Aten, or the religion of Aten. Base 10 mathematics, Sumerian mathematics, 10 attention, Aten. So look at Aten in itself, look at Atum. It appears that all is not Atum, and that's not a criticism on Santos. The knowledge and the gnosis of antiquities up until his point of research will have been as it was. the research that is coming out, and the words and the renaissance that Egypt is happening in itself. Remember the obelisks that were transported by the types of Romans into Washington, London, and the Vatican there is interesting in itself. Princess Scotia and etc. We've got lots to touch on. So Aten, Atum, Apep, and Amen, Amen Ra are my specialist areas. You will be getting a lot on this later regarding the worship, monotheistic, Atum and Aten, Apep. Incredible, it really is. Which would lead me on to your rights, your law and your rules. The Federal Reserve, the royal family and the Vatican. It appears that the Federal Reserve has gone back to the state control, the federal American government, rather than it being separate. I can't answer all the questions there about the Fed Reserve, Trump, QAnons, moving from private to effectively public, back under the control of the Senate, the state, the US government, and the royal family. Rumours of fly like flies, boarded up, furniture moving out. Are they doing an investigation? Is it to do with other things? Who knows? But boarded up, empty, royal families, previous, what would we call them there? Estates, houses, empty, seals being removed. A lot of controversy surrounding that. What is happening? I'd like to know. The Vatican, again, similarly, we'll look at the money, the banks, the England side of stuff, alongside the Securities Exchange Commissions and the international community and how all that moves. Mortgages and MOB, getting emails about that, about what's happening. Is it kosher? Is it legit? Magna Carta being brought back into it. We are a parallel but a different road to what's being said. We have the international rulings, persons, consumers, citizens, humans, etc. We will go down. Okay. Health crimes. What is a health crime? It could now be considered in some countries, like I won't say the names, but some that I've heard of recently. If you don't wear a mask outside, it will be considered that you're as bad as a crime. Well, it's a contravention of the Road Traffic Management Act when one doesn't belt up, clunk, click, and put a seatbelt on in the UK. So if you are outside in a country or landmass, it is actually a bank masquerading as a landmass. Their policy and their rules and their statute public law, which is code, will classify some not wearing a mask or protection outside as a health crime. Hence this video and the topics within. 200 scientists and doctors have approached the World Health Organization and said, are you sure about that? Much like the scientists that have approached private corporations and government and said, 5G, are you sure about that? We'd like to see the proof of claims. So that's highly controversial in itself. Whitehall has become a whitewash alongside the White House, and Black Lives Matter is surging on. So that's something we're eager to help with and to echo and to virtually take a knee. Our darker skinned family, we'd like to talk to you about issues, what's going on. This presentation is going to incorporate a House of Commons document, which is from, it's called the HC, you'll get the links, 1456 Home Affairs Committee, and I have written evidence submitted by the National Black Police Association, which is abbreviated to November Bravo Papa Alpha, and that will be from publications.parliament UK. That's not from YouTube, that's not from Facebook. This is a parliamentary study, evidence, written evidence with an introduction, a background coming from 1958, violence breaking out in Notting Hill Gate, West London, up to 2011, riots in London and elsewhere following the shooting of Mark Duggan during a Trident operation. That will incorporate the Pelian Code of Policing for you, and I will go into the Pelian Code of Policing. What I found was, you may remember I brought to you Sir Robert Peel's Principles of Policing with regards to the Metropolitan Police Act of 1829, and it was, I see recently it was referenced in, oh wow, it was referenced in, 1 minute, here, it was referenced in the House of Commons HC 1456 Home Affairs Committee, and that was in the written evidence submitted by the National Black Police Association, NBPA, publications at Parliament UK, and that was retrieved on the 14th of June 2020 and used, so that was very recent. So we're going to tag on to that with regards to that topic and rules and law and forces and police and the concept of professional corporate policing in itself. We're going to look at arrest. What is an arrest? You have a medical heart arrest. A boat that is not worthy to go on the shores, the sea, will remain on the shores in the dock, the marina, and it will be arrested. And then man is arrested about his duties. So we'll go on to that as well. The justice system, the criminal justice system, charges, powers of arrest, all important. So then we have a document which I don't have ready, which is going to be brought to you by the late Sir Tom Bingham. All right, we've got Lord Blackheath that we brought to you some time ago, and then Sir Tom Bingham. I'm going to bring up that for you, the rule of law and his principles and his criticism within that. That's loading now, and I'll give you all the links. They are on the .com, and you will get them through here and the .com, and you can make notes if you need to shortly. We have new files, and we're doing cutting edge work with regards to documentation, brand new, tailor-made publications and documents. So I have uploaded and refreshed the literature resource vault, your library, on the .com. And once that loads, I will tell you that we have communication notice, a conditional acceptance in effect for local government, which is the council, which is managed under your central government. That notice is entitled Conditional Acceptance for Local Authorities, Councils in particular, after civil domestic issues. As we brought to you, adoption is up 43%, and for various reasons. That's worrying. We've got our eye on Buckingham Palace for a new childcare asset centre for homeless. That would be nice to use as a national symbol, a landmass of Britain symbol. That would be used for after civil domestic issues. Both mum and dad must consider to use this lingo and not offer any further information. We do not answer questions for reasons of security. If the safety or the guardianship team have advised of an interview or an appointment that is forthcoming that they've arranged to your surprise, and you don't have a legal representative and you're not legally trained, which we know you're not, that's fact, we strongly urge you to consider emailing and asking for a different appointment that is more suitable, to cancel that one and to make one by appointment. Visitations and interviews are done by appointment, strictly by appointment, and we manage this way. If you're not an attorney at law and you're not legally trained, but you're doing a legal action with regards to legal signatures, signing property, children rights, the civil issue has been passed by the local rank and file Met officers. Now the Pelion Code comes into it, and the policing and the consent, and this is where it gets a bit sticky and complicated. They pass it over with no charges to be made to the council to manage and look at. So that's a private corporation that requires contract, whether it be tacit, acquiescence, tort, non-disclosure, constructive, statutory, implied, or with full disclosure and knowingly, which is where we're getting to now. So that in itself is a shout and a fist bump to Kev, to Graham, and to us for all getting that together, but heavily it relies upon some text from Kevin, and we've both looked over that and we've issued it out, and we're waiting on the results. It has been interpreted as an injunction initially by the council that have received that on behalf of somebody that we've assisted, informed recently. We've got the version 2 of the Maximus Pip Atos conditional acceptance up as well, again from Kevin and Graham. Alright, so that's revised regarding is it mandatory. You've got a step-by-step walkthrough on that. We have a rogue callers, agents and officers castle defender pack, which includes a template letter at the end for you to use for the private property, the management of unannounced or unexpected visitors to the property. Even if they are expected, there are rules and policies to follow. There are elements of danger and indeed security risks, legal security risks and physical theft, common law, assault, robbery, crime, security risks with an opening the castle portcullis or door. So visitors are seen strictly by appointment only, and that would be for rogue traders, cold callers, agents and officers at the property via incoming calls, letters, telephone lines, and cold callers, rogue traders, they trick man, often by pretending to be tradesmen such as builders and etc. So there's a whole host of reasons why we need to lock down the castle, secure the portcullis, not just issue a free last will and testament to look at, give you powers of attorneys to consider, giving you the Sovereign Masters Guild foundational level free kudos to us for the civil judicial template for justice, the CQV quasi-trust principles they're constructed, quasi. You see my text and further enhancements on where we are with the quasis, the trust and the CEST KV and CEST K. You've got the third publication, the principles of trust law, governance, master-servant slavery on to look at. There's a shadow contracts, fear and misery versus a basic minimum income publication to look at. A UK corporate rank and file officers, police, constables, powers to stop and search, interaction scenarios to look at, 2 PowerPoints, and that's got it so far, but we have a total of 315 documents to look at, and they're doing well, the feedbacks are good from them. The topics are fast and furious, from ancient Egypt, before Atum, going back to Akhenaten, the crass comments in the arena at the minute, Labour, Conservatives, the NHS, China, the summer statement from the Exchequer from Rishi Sunak there, the Chancellor, Mr. Chancellor, another 30 billion promised, stamp duty, vouchers to E-Town. Get your comments in, give me any, I'm just jogging your memory before I set off on our rights, law and rules. We've got criticism here coming left, right and centre. We'd like to encapsulate your thoughts and feelings on that. So I'd like to say hello to who's in the room, who's in the chat, and then I shall begin with the presentation, and I will give you the links in the description or at the end of the video. I have quite a bit to go through. I'm trying to keep it simple. So thank you for joining, to Kevin, Eric, Anders, Gomad, Anthony, Mr. Dav. How do we need to catch up? How you doing there, Mr. Dav? Blessings, fist bumps. You share the show on Twitter whilst waiting. Thank you, my good man. Thank you, thank you. Hello to our worldwide initiates and fam. From England, what? Drinking my tea, doing my presentation with my wobbly tooth. It's going to be extracted 4 PM today by an emergency dentist. The next time you see me, I will be Pirate David. Buckingham House allegedly making 250 staff redundant. The rumours of fly like flies. Thank you for that, Eric. How are you, Anders, by the way? Not spoken to you for a while. I see you were getting to with Kev, alright, I'm just catching up. It's 1:30 GMT. Up to date with emails. Kevin's in his email. We're on to the .com. Facebook's looking reasonably well. So before I go to, let's get on with it, because I know you're all eager for this information and there's a lot of confusion and craziness going around. So this is going to be put into and built into our merit levels. The first was the foundation key competence of the Masters Guild we've brought to you. That was given away. It's been uploaded to academia. It's been taken to other .coms. It's been taken to WordPresses. They have been taken to Facebook, and thank you all for the praise, grumble, the feedback that we're getting from them. They're under continuous improvement in this renaissance of law, language, science, religion, spiritualism that we're going through. You must appreciate everything is ongoing and live and direct. So they're continuously evolving. None of them are legal advice. We have a caveat and disclaimer there for what we do. And we're moving on now to the merit level, which is the second tier. We had the bronze foundation. Now that's your 101 key competence. Now we're going to the merit, which is the silver, and subsequent what you're going to get some meat and bones on, all right? Once you know who you are, where you are, what you are, how you speak, what you speak, the language, the instrumentation, your person, all of these basics that we need to get through. There's at least 20. Then you're ready. Once you're protected, knowledgeable, full disclosed, trust implied, constructed, corrected, declarations, proclamations, claims in the private, safe, alternative provisions, then we can look forward to going out into the public liabilities as a private man. So we're going to start with Lord Bingham and the rule of law. We mentioned lords, Lord Dennings, Lord Wolfe. The alternative dispute resolution will come into this, dispute resolution, or ADR, Lord Wolfe, Lord Denning. Now we've got Lord Blackheath and Lord Bingham, RIP. I'm not promoting anything other than common law, okay, through this presentation. I'm not here to argue, vexate, and to imitate. We're here to perform a job and a duty as best we do in our own unique, original way. So you will find Lord Bingham on the .com. You will find links there, and you will find a publication much like supplementary to Lord Denning and the rules of law, businesses, laws, and England and Wales in itself, the landmass, its courts, its jurisprudence, and the 8 principles which would be the key ingredients necessary to support certain aims that Lord Bingham was on about. His complications whilst in the legal realm is one of 8. The law must be accessible, it must be intelligible, clear and predictable. It is not any of that at the minute, not at all. Point 1. So we agree. Number 2, questions of legal right and liability should ordinarily be resolved by the exercise of the law and not the exercise of discretion. All these will be enhanced later for you, all right? Number 3 of 8, laws should apply equally to all. We're talking about the Britons, the Briton landmass here, but in general, they should all be equal and the same for all. Ministers and public officials must exercise the powers conferred in good faith. They must do it fairly, for the purposes of which they were indeed conferred, reasonably and without exceeding the limits of such powers. Number 5, the law must afford adequate protection of fundamental human rights. Number 6, the state must provide a way of resolving disputes which the parties cannot themselves resolve. Number 7, the civil and criminal adjudicative procedures provided by the state should indeed be fair, not biased, full disclosed, etc. Number 8, the rule of law requires compliance by the state with its obligations in international as well as national constitution, inherent laws we have here, bylaws, Magna Cartas, constitutions particular to this landmass. And it's said that if man or the legal law society, the City of London, the Crown, one of the many crowns we have, if they observe these 8 principles, in particular the 5th, affording adequate protection of fundamental human rights, we avoid the dilemma identified by Professor Joseph Raz in his 1979 publication or works, The Authority of Law. The rule of law is an expression that I think most of us have been familiar with as an expression for quite some time, my scribes. We have heard politicians including it amongst a list of desirable things, usually along with freedom, democracy, and things of that kind of nature. We have heard judges using it. They tend to say Parliament could not have possibly intended to enact this because that would indeed violate the rule of law. We have heard the expression used in very dignified international instruments like the preambles to the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the European Convention of Human Rights and the Treaty of the European Union. just to mention a few. There are on none of these occasions, on the whole, has anybody ever paused, having evoked the rule of law, to say what they actually mean by it. A lot of you are confused. Which law, what law, whom, person, human, man, citizen, employee, public, private, language, grammar, pens, colours. So yes, there is a lot of confusion, and on the 9th, 2005, Section 11 of the Constitutional Reform Act of that year, 2005, by amendment enacted, nothing in this act shall detract from the existing constitutional principle of the rule of law. From that we derive that there is an existing constitutional principle, and that itself, the act, does not detract from it. Are you with me? Anybody that looks through the back of the act, or indeed elsewhere, to find a definition does not and will not find a definition. And our view is that it's not very wise to try and give one, because of the difficulty, the lack of understanding of it. Equity comes into play, and I don't believe I have got referencing so far of Lord's referencing equity, equitable remedy, relief, and that kind of avenue within the High Courts, and the evocation of these ecremental matters. But the Acts are recognised by statute as principle of constitution, and that is the most basic rules that govern this bank that's masquerading as a country, the United Kingdom, and also England and Wales. Let me add that bit in. And that, of course, means that the time is bound to come, and indeed has already come, where people in court will invoke such things and say, we are relying on this constitutional principle. I hear you shout the Magna Carta. I know. That's all we hear. Constitution attaches people to the national debt. Know this. Is constitution public law or private law? Is it man-made? Is it contract law? You know, what parties does it involve? What titles and rights? What status, standing and capacity do you rely upon? It's vague obfuscation as to what it actually means. We have attempted, and first of all, and the Lord Bingham has attempted, in a sentence to sum up, and it's in a rather legalistic way, what the crux of the confusion of law is, and what they, the supreme, ones, actually think it is. That all individuals and organisations within the state, whether public or private, are bound by and entitled to the benefit of, and that's quite important, that you are entitled to the benefit of individuals and organisations. Two key words there. Within the state, well, you can get out of the state quite simply. You can export. Man can be exported, and persons can be in the state, and man can be on the land, and the state is the sea where the person is. So whether public or private, they are bound by and entitled to the benefit of. All right, it's not just for telling you off the law, it's to benefit you and to give you remedy, resolve, relief, maintenance, cure, and etc. It's not just for telling off. Laws prospectively should be promulgated and publicly administered in the courts. And that's quite a mouthful. It's just trying to spell out in a little bit more detail his presentations, talks and publications in the way that it is intended to be extremely accessible to anybody, whether they are a lawyer or not, to what the above actually means. So the 8 principles, the first of these, you may actually remark and say, well, my goodness me, what could be more obvious than that the law should be, so far as possible, clear, accessible and intelligible. That's why you need a solicitor to translate. The law society, the barristers and everybody are there to translate. They use legalese, they commit at the higher levels personage and barratry. These are actually crimes against man when we get down to it. You can't break the law to enforce a rule. You have a rule and you have law. We do not have the rule of law. And in this publication from somebody who's established and at the top of his game, respected, heralded as the new Lord Denham, we are here, we see the quotation is the rule of law. Well, it's rules and law is where we're at. So there's one amendment, the language amendment, the status, standing and capacity amendment, the private remedy amendment. The 1882 Bills of Exchange are not a public remedy, they are private. The UCC value, rights, acceptance, transfer, endorsement, offsetting, private banking techniques. Okay, so UCC comes into the private banking. You have the Bills of Exchange, and then we have banking constitutions themselves. So we have problems with governments churning out thousands of pages of legislation every year, and then those thousands of pages of legislation are being supplemented by thousands more pages of ministerial orders made under statutory rule. Not law, rule, code, secular. It is extremely difficult to know what the law is, not least because provisions are amended, and then the amendment is amended, and then the amendment to the amendment is then amended. The Lord Bingham's own words, not SPL's, not Indy's, but the analysis and the breakdown of a man's time. We'll introduce him later in the game, and it is a game. There's a case which he is accounted for where a man was subject of compensation order, 66 grand, large, all right, 66 bags of sand, and it was only at the very late stage and by chance, the Lord admits, that it did emerge, that the order, which this order had been made, had indeed been revoked 7 years earlier. What? And nobody could have found that out, but it was, by chance, found out. That shows you that when we say it shouldn't rely upon discretion, it does rely upon discretion, dexterity, diligence. Oh, the Bills of Exchange has been superseded. 1 minute. I do believe that. Ah, yes, I remember now. That's what we're talking about. However, pointing a finger of accusation towards Parliament and to legislation and elsewhere, it's not good enough, and we can't hold to account the offices, the public offices, the wards of the state, the Tony Blairs, because like Cummings and etc., they're Crown agents and they're protected. Mans that go out knowing they've got bad eyes to test their eyesight, coming on the news to give a public admission of a crime, a breach, an offence, a traffic statutory, they said driving, it's public commercial, you've got bad eyes, but you go out to test your eyes and have a drive. These are the men running the country. These are the ones that are obfuscating the law, skirting around it. The ones that make it are not subject to it. Everywhere, all around the realm, we're seeing law is not equal, law is not accessible, it's not tangible, and it's not clear. And there are ones that think they're above it. Dominic Cummings, the Scottish ladies, etc., in parliamentary positions that are, abusing. So Parliament and the way that we look doing it at the minute and protesting and putting things in and how we're managing it is not direct and good enough, and it doesn't get the response we need. They are given too extreme prolixity. So they're given too much prolixity, length and complication. No? They do not, in our opinion, Lord's opinions and others' opinions, do what they ought to do, courts and judges and the law, which is to make law as simple and as straightforward as they might for the layman. And this is true even at the highest levels, where you'll get 5 mans, judges, councils, institutions, all giving their own take on something, which is the releasing on bail of sex offenders, and then the taxi driver that was released got his probation taken back because it was a bad decision and he was deemed a danger to society. So there is a conflict, there is nothing straightforward, and once man raises up their head and says lawful objections, etc., and makes their voice known, then it is looked at and addressed again, where it shouldn't be. It should be done straightforward. Prince Andrew, the issues there, Epstein, Weinstein, it's gone beyond a joke. So we are here to say we will help and do it with the state and not against the state. We are governed by law and not discretion. If we look at, we are governed by consent. Theresa May's admission. We had the beautiful grand chaps on Radio 4, what I'm going to bring you, saying that we're not a police state, we are judged by consent. So we are governed, we are self-governing man, and our persons are governed by the laws, the codes, by consent and not discretion. We do not want the by and large to be the subject of, or we do not want by and large to be subject to the arbitrary whim of some autocrat, whether he be a minister, official, or indeed a judge. So we have an example given by Lord Bingham in this video that I've made these notes from. No better example than the arbitrary whim of some autocrat than the execution of John the Baptist by King Herod. Church and state, why not use a church reference within a state ruling? Why was John the Baptist executed by King Herod? Did he do something terrible? It was because the king promised his daughter that in return for her wonderful dancing, he would give her anything that she desired. Anything more utterly contrary to the rule of law than that, it would be quite hard to imagine, no? So when I say, meanwhile, while Rome gets drunk on the blood of saints and innocent, you know where I'm coming from. But Rome, it's Egypt and Rome, it would appear. The Racar fellas and the gang there, the monarchy, the Fed. And the state, the church, is your Illuminati there. The third rule elaborated on equality before the law, and equity provides this, your equality. Your equality won't come in public, statutory, common law, constitution, Magna Carta, principle. You will not get equality as a person, as a legal person, as a natural person. You'll get equality with your correct status, standing and capacity, not so much with whimsical trusts that were made between the monarchy, the barons and the people, which were constructed, which were agreed to, which means that it's a certain type of area, which means it's got a limitation of its power and extent and the protectional levels. We found something way above that, and we worked down. We will include within the common law the Magna Carta lower down the list, whereas others are saying to put it at the top as your primary line of lawful dissent and lawful objection. So equality before the law. Again, you were saying, well, that's completely obvious, Dave. We're in England, we're in the United Kingdom, the Commonwealth, the monarchy. We have the Crown of London, and equality, that's surely going to be, a standard. Well, it isn't. Slaves weren't equal, were they, to be fair? A number of religious believers weren't equal, to be fair, until relatively recently. Women are not equal until recently, and are still not equal. There is a tendency, not just in this country, but elsewhere, to treat non-nationals not very equally. Immigrants, yes, and how they're looked at. Darker skinned family, Black Lives Matter, exactly. The police being investigated and being found to be institutionally racist. So get ready. It's not simply an immigration context, but for other purposes as well. The fourth point made is the exercise of public powers. You're telling us that there is abuse of office, abuse of powers whilst in the public office, abuse powers not being proportionate to powers that are conferred by the state should be exercised by those on whom they are conferred, reasonably, fairly, honestly, with full disclosure, and for the purpose of which they're conferred, not for usurpation and putting in the profits from the annexing of the man to the fiction, the person, the estate, and then taking that profit and putting it into foreign shore registered foreign sitters, corporations that are not on the landmass, Britain, which the Crown of London is usurping through central governments and the legislation and the language and the religion and the money, and it goes back and then goes out onto foreign shores. And we haven't fought for this landmass to watch it be raped and to watch our families be raped of rights. I'm sorry to use that word, but if you don't know your rights, you don't know whom you are, you won't notice when they're gone. So the state and the church getting together with the banks, and the monarchies, the state, the monarchy, the people, the government, are we still at war? It appears we are. So these powers that we have granted them are not being exercised. Exorcism, all rise. You see these spiritual words here mixed in with our law. What do you do when you go to the Bible, to the court, and they want you to swear and tell them that you're a good, truthful, respectful man? You swear on a Bible. If it was a UCC coded handbook, we'd be looking at UCC codes, but it's not. It's effectively a Bible there. You've got your ecclesia, your bonded instruments, your language, your money, your status, your standing, your capacity, your liability, your public, your admiralty, your maritime. It's just a dirty mess. So what are we saying when we say that the powers publicly conferred by statute should be exercised on those that they are conferred reasonably, fairly and honestly? and importantly for the purpose of which they're conferred. So when the Lord Bingham recalls of an example where the Terrorism Act was used and invoked to exclude a man who told the Home Secretary at a Labour Party conference one time that he was talking rubbish. So why do we see in the English United Kingdom history that the Foreign Secretary, not the Home Secretary, was making a noise at a conference, and so to get rid of him, this establishment, they took the Terrorism Act to a whole new level and used it on a Foreign Secretary. Go search for it. So we have evidence left, right and centre of abuse of powers, and this is where we internationally complain about this and make our claims and prove our points. It's a very important principle that we select or elect. We select and elect, all right, but elect with the S is select. They're not elected, they're selected, but we elect them, allegedly, members of Parliament. We grant them authority to make the laws. They make the laws bind. These laws, public, secular, when you're in a position of parliamentary, you're under the titles, you're not in your sovereign, natural, divine state, you're in a different status. You're public, not private. Your capacity is administrator, not grantor or settler. Your standing is, and so forth. So they're not laws as such. We use these, the landmass is called the codes and the public law, when we have Mosaic law, biblical law, natural law, we have codified Roman law, and we have trust law. So when we say law, you need to know which bit of law applies to status, standing and capacity. So we grant them these powers to make these laws, I use loosely, codes, public law. We do not grant the officers and people who are given powers by those laws a blank check, do we? Which is what they think they seem to have. We grant them power to do what the statute says they can or must do. That's what you're paid to do. That is your duties, your obligations as the principal, P-L-E, not P-A-L, when I say principal. The sixth point is dispute resolution, or ADR, and that would be, as we've brought to you, by Lord Wolfe. And we live in a society where private vengeance is discounted. If you are owed a lot of money by somebody, ergo we, I, one, and corporations don't hire a lot of big barries, the heavy mob, to go and threaten a man or woman until they pay you, or discharge, transfer. This used to happen in other countries, we'll say Russia and Italy, for example, not exclusively. I have Italian, Greek blood, I don't have any Russian, but I know these countries had a certain way of doing law. We've covered on the Hangouts how you was holding hot molten metal to decide whether or not you was innocent or guilty, the drowning of the witches, the burning at the stake, converting to Christianity by the sword. So we don't so much in this day and age hire big barries, mafioso, cartel type regime to go and threaten until you're paid. But it seems to have manifested right here on the streets of Britain in the form of civil collection, rules, regulations, orders. In order for taking control of goods, we are warranted to execute this order, and we find that there are debt collector agencies executing forged orders for taking control of goods. We have the videos and the audio to prove it. Man's turning up with iPads, the officers sometimes, and it getting a bit messy, dirty, theft, property, rights and titles, assumed, presumed, CPR not being followed, actual crimes, too many crimes to mention right now. But as the Lord says, we don't live in a society, we do live in a society with private vengeance, and the public corporations are coming to the private man's castles and threatening less abled, non-compos mentis, ones that are not legally trained, innocents, and they are stealing property, rights, titles are being ignored. We're trying to correct, and we have rules being enforced by the breaking of the law, the real law, the L-O-R-E, not the L-A-W. So no word to the wise and to the hoi polloi, your agents and officers are not following law. We have too much law, it's too confusing, and not even the ones in the officers in the uniform are prevalent and au fait to all of the bills, acts, amendments, statutes, and so we need to look at how we integrate with Cressida Dick and the rank and file officers, the crime commissioners, the attorney generals, the courts, the prime ministers, the lords, the secretaries, and we get the disclosure on, and we move forward with fundamental international backing, biblical, and as strong as we can get it, with the common law, the Magna Cartas, and the Constitution falling somewhere in the midway to the lower part, whereas before they was at the top. You have a decision to make, you have choices before you. So we see that there is litigation happening, and there may be mitigation that has been missed. The civil procedure rules haven't been followed, which is putting the claimant in default. We've learned to conditionally accept, count into serious dispute, and to move on this way. Honour, clarity, liability on the claimant, and it's working very effectively, very well, very happy on all areas with this process that is not ours, legal, law, England and Wales, beating the United Kingdom, moving over to Britain. So we see that litigation happens, and perhaps there should be some mitigation sometimes when we point out the legal parameters, pre-action protocols, civil procedure rules are not followed. We can prove that various and many ways, too many to mention now. We've got rather good at this, and so have you. Then you put the claimant into default, then you can get some kind of checkmate on a chessboard. Tacit acquiescence leads to torts then lead to estoppel. Estoppel is your legal stopping. Neither party can move because you're at a deadlock. We like to go further than that. Deadlocks are good. We go to discharge, endorsing the correct status, standing, capacity, title, rights, putting the agents into place, correction of the trust, all of these higher, superior, magnificent armour of God ways of managing. So litigation does not on the whole lead to happiness, does it? No. And we're being robbed. Granddads and young ones that have gone to great battles to sort this land mass out haven't done that. So the Crown, City of London, the reserves, the Fed, the banks, the elite, the monarchy can just divvy us up and put us into pigeonholes and cascade us away, when we're no use to them anymore, when we've built all of the infrastructures and done all of the sweat equity jobs they require to make their billions, then we're cast aside. So we don't discount arbitration and mediation, conciliation and other ways of resolving claims and cases. That's what we specialise in. We keep them low, out of court. We take control and for ourselves, and we're teaching through our publications, videos, enhancements, documents, and these how to do your business correctly. What is a benefit to you? Well, how to be a beneficiary of these processes, mediation, alternative dispute, arbitration. They're beneficial to man, and we like being the beneficiary, do we not? In the last resort, if we have rights to assert or defend, we ought to be able to express to a court or even go to a court. I say that loosely. You can send an officer into a court in the form of paperwork and not have to physically go yourself. That's deeper again. We'll get into level 2. We'll expand on everything. What I'm just glossing over and skirting around, there is expansion, and it's an add-on for that, all right? So you'll get them to come in depth throughout the next 6 months publications of the second tier, your merit level. So you should be able to go to a court established by the common law of the land in order to get an answer, assuming that it isn't going to be a frivolous or stupidly, phrased or utterly hopeless contention. It is given in return, for your question. We don't want it in a foreign legalese church, Latin, lingu, châtel. I've got another word for our Kev there in his French pronunciations. Instead of chattel, we could say châtel. They often have hidden, non-disclosed, assumed, presumed contracts and public liabilities with the Crown State with regards to paying debts to society. So it's not straightforward. You've got your rights there, but what rights does the legal entity, all caps, has? What rights does the natural person have? What rights does man have? Where do you draw your rights from? How do you defend them? How do you enforce them? In law, in their game, 2 witnesses make a fact. So we have got quite good at the parameters of our movements and how to limit the discretion of. Remember, they are Masonic and they are controlled, and they commit miscarriages of justice left, right, and centre. Grant Shapps, the UK Transport Secretary, on Friday, the 3rd of July 2020, on the radio at 8:45 a.m, he was quoted saying, "We are not a police state," reference holy days, isolation, countries, and red zones. Interesting. Thank you, Grant, for that. That, you may again say, is completely obvious. That litigation is very expensive. You know, everybody should have the chance to be able to go to court, but it's such as to make it very, very difficult and a formidable undertaking for any layman, except the very rich or the legally aided, and the legally aided are indeed a diminishing group. So to go to court for any purpose, you know, it's very hard in that way. It's not a new problem. In the 1650s, somebody said, "The law is beyond remedy. It costs £10 to recover £5. Spend a pound to save a penny," is another saying I've heard. It's a massive problem, and we see that some centuries later, on from the 1600s, that problem is still with us today. The problem of delay is a current problem with the virus and pandemic that's going off. We're not as bad as other countries, but it takes too much time for cases to reach court. Human rights, you know, there are those that say human rights, however, has nothing to do with the law, the common law of the land. But if the law is absolutely clear, the law should be observed, and it doesn't matter how appalling that the things are that the law is prescribing. Well, we say, "Whoa, you got an angry king, an angry queen, an angry monarch, an angry presidente," like what we've seen with, you know, some Middle Eastern countries, Syria, Hungary, the slave law, China state, and the powers that they've issued there. You know, so the law should be absolutely clear, but what law, which law, what is law? That's what we're here to sort out. Which word, what spelling, what dictionary, what definition, everything like that, you see. So very, very cunning what they've done to us here. The codex within, you know, the book of Thomas, it's got 5 books to it. It's not just one. And the way that they've done it, the phonetics, the Phoenicians, it's very, very clever. We have the codes though, and with the quantum edition being added. Did you like them posts about the quantum? Thank you to Q for that. Bosh, you've sorted us out good and proper there. So nobody's going to say that women, for example, have equal rights. Let's look at Saudi Arabia, and then let's look at Eastern, Western European countries. Just have a think. Within any given society, we think there is a high degree of consensus as to what the most important rights are. You can list them all now for me if you want. The invisible property that man has seemingly forgotten about. Look at the legal maxims. He who does not know he has any rights, therefore has no rights. SPLSpro.com, Indiglo, and these scribes here, those that know they have rights, see them, respect them, and to quote MOB from one of his videos and presentations, our rights end where yours begin, and there's a clear line. That line has been rubbed out, and rights are invisible. You can't see them, you don't have a list of them, you don't have a reference card, so where did they come from and what are they? You don't know what your rights are, and you go to a court to be honourable and they speak another language. They deal in many types of money. They have ecclesia running, they have possibly UCC, Admiralty, Maritime. You need a solicitor to go in. 2 parties go in with a solicitor, only one party will come out winning. So having a solicitor doesn't mean you're going to win, you know, and your rights are invisible. If you don't know your rights and they say they want you to volunteer and you start volunteering thinking you're honourable, you're not. You're going to the slaughter, you are hanging yourself. And so rights in legal realm are not very good. In biblical realm, they're excellent. In trust and equity, which comes from the Bible and the Judeo-Christian gnosis from antiquities, before Akhenaten prophesied about Aten and Maat, the Maat, M-A-A-T, the light, the wisdom, and making the dynasties, deities, gods and whatever, going from all of what, 2000 did we say, up to the point of Aten, making the law and the, you know, the respect of the sun, Aten. We've got the 10, the X, the Romans, the Egyptians. It's all, for me, at this point in time, sinking in more so than it ever has. There's more pieces of the puzzle coming in, but the legal realms say that the man that doesn't know he has any right has to type into DuckDuck legal maxims UK law and get back to me on some of them that concern you. Let he who will be deceived be deceived. They're not honourable. How many maxims are there? You can find that out. How many codified areas of statute, legislation, acts and bills are there? Millions. Ignorance of the law is no defence. Well, that's not law, and we're not ignorant. So, out of sight, out of ment, out of mind. So your rights are going to be reinforced and proclaimed and retained, and we will show you simply how to do that. Reservation and retainment of rights after correction and recension of non-disclosed, constructive, implied contracts that we have now. One does not miss what one cannot see. Those that do not know their rights do not notice when they have their lawful rights legally stripped away from them, is what my words are. So we've gone through that. The devil's advocates. Down on the streets, we call this murder. It's not to do with ignorance. You was never shown. You was only given Sunday school, a Bible, or two, and different books there. And those have been shown, much like Enki, Thoth, Buddha, Atum, Akhenaten, Aten, Apep, Amen. There's a massive renaissance going off, and I'm so happy where we are. This is not a cast of sadness, it's a cast of happiness. You should have a fair trial. Let's go to then. If you're on trial, who's on trial, what's on trial, name, date of birth, surname, man in the dock, contracts, Admiralty, Maritime, Common Law, Ecclesia, UCC, Trust and Equity. So you may say it's completely obvious that we'd have a fair trial. Well, no, personage and barratry, a different language, legalese, Black's Law. So a criminal or civil trial should be as fair as it possibly could be, and that's obvious. Well, no, there are issues addressed by lords and ourselves and you that are called hybrid or mixed trials, where they start off civil but they may end up with criminal charges. I won't go through the example that the Lord give about parole boards and so forth and fundamental rights of fair trial, but if you are the subject of an adverse order, like being made refused parole or being made the subject of a control order, we all should know what the case is against you, I, them, is, and you should have complete opportunity to argue it in a forum where the judge or decision maker, not always a judge, it can be a decision maker, okay, has received no material which the person who is the subject of an adverse order has not. So you should all have the same information before you, but that's been departed from because grounds of national security. Remember the Terrorism Act and the Home Secretary? Well, now we've got terrorism and issues of national security. So a provision has indeed been made within English law that there are situations in which the decision makers can be given material which is not shown to the defendant. If we call them that, yeah? Or you, yourself, but they'll be shown to the lawyers, but not shown to they'll be shown to a special advocates, not to lawyers, not to the defendants. And those special advocates who are shown the material evidence of the claims of the matter of facts, but they cannot communicate with the defendant after they've seen it from national security reasons. So you cannot take instructions and ask, anything there, and that's not very safe for us to have, but it is in one way, but in others, unregulated, it's bloody dangerous. So who regulates the regulators? International law covers very significant areas of our international lives. The law of the sea, that would be Admiralty and Maritime, as we've brought to you and expanded upon and detailed for you what Admiralty is, what Maritime is, merchants as well. The law of the air. The law of the air is where the aeroplanes are, everybody, and the birds. So that must be what the law of the air is. Well, the seas of commerce are in air, the trust relationships. You'd argue that the seas of commerce would be the watery, liquidy type seas there. Well, yes, indeed, you would, physically, but you know how they twist it up. So you have the law of air, in my opinion, in our findings, would contain trust technology. Trust would be based in the air, in the sky, castles in the sky. Shout to Ian Van Dahl, oh, tell me why. And the law of outer space, the seas of space, yeah, uniform commercial codes, I believe, and such things as data, Star Trek, you don't break the core directives of. We've got the Pentagon, the releasing of information to do with aliens, space, sky gods, visitors, technology from non-human ways. So we say this now, without being labelled buffoons, idiots. Eric von Daniken's works have heralded quite a lot. We have the Pentagon and the CIA, MI5, GCHQ all doing a disclosure, and the laws of space there are apparent. When they go to space, what laws do they follow when they are allegedly loosely in, sorry, flat earth crew, just for everyone, so we can get everyone's brain thinking. I know some of you are forward on to others, I'll bear it from the beginning to the advanced ones. There is a law of Antarctica, isn't there? We've got treaties, the South Pole and Antarctica, the Antarctic Treaty, that's got its law there. Yes, the only treaty to be respected in all of the 50 years that it's been established. So, too much said. And also things closer to home as well is what the international laws govern in our international lives. The Schengen Agreement I found very beneficial when we was travelling in Europe and going through checkpoints, north way of Hungary to somewhere, Slovakia, Slovenia was it, and going through the border, not a man about. So it's just how it goes on that level, on an international level. So the ministerial code, which is a code that binds all ministers, okay, in this country, this trust, the UK paper-based entity, again a bank masquerading as a country, no less. Same as the United States government, everybody with a Dun and Bradstreet number, a registration with Companies House, registered in that way. Codes, ministers, ministers, the church and the state are governed by international law above constitutional and Magna Carta. The code says that ministers should comply with international law as well as national law. And of course, you should all know, if you have applied your due diligence across your initiations and education, that international rule, what does it govern, everyone? I'll give you a moment. Look at my cold tea. What does international rule govern? It governs something. I've given it you recently. We've given it you many a time. International rule governs the force of law. All right, so we have the rule and we have law. But in this situation, what we find is an oxymoron. And we have a thing called the rule of law, which is a legal, public, statutory, common law, constitutional, Magna Carta, rule of law. The rule of law is governed and uses the force of law. That's why we have a police force. So we're governed under consent. Yes, we are. But whom is governed under consent? What is governed under consent? And then international rule would oversee the mechanism, like the bills of exchange for the endorsement, transfer, and etc. Private monetary banking remedy. International rule governs the use of the force of law. Just putting it there for you, so you know that, and how we do and what we do. It was said about, after an inquiry with the Chilcot report and somebody Kelly, was it, and the investigation into weapons of mass destruction in Iraq and Saddam and the bombing of the Middle East and the empire, the cradle of life, all the evidences that we're going to need for the pre-Christian and the Egyptian gnosis leading up to the dynasties of the Egyptians, going to the Romans and the etceteras there. The history, Iraq has got a lot to bring to us. The Middle East, the Assyrian Dead Sea Scrolls, the text, the Assyrian text, the amount of scrolls there, the text left out from the Bible again, just like the Gospel of Thomas and the 5 books there, along with other such. It's just amazing. There's such a renaissance going off, a torrent, too much to be fair. We're doing the best we can with this Minority Report. So Iraq was brought into question, and was it lawful? Did we invade? Tony Blair and who was it in the American side? Stormin Norman and Bush, was it? I don't know which Bush. I was very, very young at the time. And a secondary subsequent invasion into Iraq thereafter. Let's look at the question of principle. It was either authorised or it was not, and that would be by the Security Council of the United Nations, the UN, ununiting nations since its erection. The crux of the government and its immediate advisors, under the then Prime Minister Tony Blair, they said it was all authorised, and the USA and Stormin Norman too. But a large body of opinion, including Lord Bingham's and others in the game, say it was not authorised, and we can see why it now must have really wanted to obtain the evidence of the cradle of life, the technologies, the alleged arcs and so forth, their Arkanaton, Ark, Spark, Ark, the Covenant, etc., texts, evidences, references, museums being looted, items going on the black market. I dread to think what we've lost, what they've lost. In essence, stargates, artifacts, ancient pictoglyphs, etc., all looted and smashed. And remember Samash, that would be the epic of Gilgamesh, and such things as the Enuma Elish. In conclusion, at this stage, we seem to live in a world which is riven by a difference of race, religion, nationality, wealth, etc. Money talks and bullshit walks. Mr. Hangman, that's from a Bruce Lee Kung Fu film. I'd like to know if you know about Hai Akeem on that quote there. If you're a Kung Fu man and you're of my demographic, then you'll know about money talks and bullshit walks. Or Mr. Hangman. There are a host of problems that set no legal principles, that no set of legal principles is ever going to overcome. There's no one size fits all, like a onesie, a stretchy onesie there made of spandex. The principles that we've been talking about and comprised under the general heading of the rule of law, which we're pointing out is a rule or it's law. We need clear separation, language, money, religion, politics. And they're very widely accepted among the many nations of the world. And the Lord suggested that it's looking like the nearest woe man is likely to come to a universal non-sectarian religion. I went, what? That's what we've said. I didn't, what? You just said something we said, a universal non-sectarian remedy where we declare the world's heritage, the world's resources, common heritage again. Matt in Sheffield has said that a few times. I've said it, we've echoed it, and to hear a Lord say that the nearest woe man is likely to come to a universal sectarian, non-sectarian religion is what he suggested, and it can be echoed again, that the observance of the 8 principles is the best recipe the world is yet devised, not only for good government at home, but for peace and order and cooperation among all of the nations of the world. With the above, and woman declaring and proclaiming restoration of the world's resources becoming common heritage again for man, we would do well to start digging. When we need to dig out of a hole, this is the preeminence of the hole we're going to dig out of. Now, I've mentioned some documents that I'm going to read from. We're going to start with arrest to keep it simple, and we're going to go technical. So what is an arrest? And this is from a non-dictionary source, all right? So you'll find lots of terms for arrest depending on the publication, the source, the definition, the legal parameter, and so forth. But in Wikipedia, you can go to Merriam's, Webster's, you can go to Black's, you can go to Collins, you can go to Oxford. I wanted to pick, and I never use Wikipedia, but I wanted to see what the general consensus in the public realm is, and non-dictionary. So this is a free encyclopedia of which we're all aware of and treat with a pinch of salt. I do not trust it, but I'm using it for an example of an arrest for public reasons, and I want to have a chat about this. It's only short. An arrest is the act of apprehending and taking a person into custody, legal protection or control, usually because the person has been suspected or of observed committing a crime. Now have a look what a crime is in an ordinary language. A crime is an unlawful act, okay, not a deed, punishable by a state or other authority. The term crime does not, in modern criminal law, have any simple and universally accepted definition. That's where we come in. Though statutory definitions have been provided for certain purposes, well, not good enough, I'm afraid. After being taken into custody, the person can be questioned further and or charged. An arrest is a procedure in the criminal justice system. Criminal justice is the delivery of justice to those who have committed crimes, essentially. It's a series of government agencies and institutions, and the goals include the rehabilitation of naughty offenders to pay their debt back to society. Regarding victims and what kind of victims we have there, police and various other officers have powers of arrest. In some places, a citizen's arrest is permitted, for example, in England and Wales. Persons and citizens. Citizen in itself is a good word. I'm not saying it's the only word, but compared to person, a citizen, civil, we look at these, there are many to choose. Some have benefits, some do not. But any person can arrest anyone whom they have reasonable grounds for suspecting to be have committed, or be guilty of committing an indictable offence. Although certain other conditions must be met before taking such an action. You'd look at the Police and Criminal Evidence Act of 1984 for that referencing. Similar powers exist in France, Italy, Germany, Austria and Switzerland. If a person is caught in an act of a crime and not willing or able to produce a valid ID. What's ID? Id and entity. It's two words, ID and entity. And it's a document. A legal document is any document that may be used to prove a person's identity, alright? Issued in small standard credit card sizes generally. It's usually called an identity card or passport card. Some countries issue formal identity documents as national identification cards. Alright, they are compulsory, non-compulsory. We have a safeguard against the abuse of power. Alright, legal abuse refers to unfair or improper legal action initiated with selfish or malicious intentions. You've heard Kevin talking about these words and certain words and malicious, and these are why we use these words. Abuse can originate from nearly any part of the legal system, including frivolous and vexatious, without any frivolity, vexation, malice, ill will. You see why we put that? Litigants, basically, abuses by law enforcement, incompetent, careless, corrupt attorneys, and etc. Alright, so we're going to go down to etymology. The word arrest is an Anglo-Norman in origin. You hear us talk Anglo-Saxon, Anglo-Norman, Normandy, alright, the Normandy invasion. So where's that coming from? Anglo-French, Anglo-Normandy in origin, derived from the French word arrête, A-R-R-E-T, meaning to stop or stay. And when it stops, it has arrested. And signifies a restraint of person. Lexicology, lexicons, you've heard us talk about a lexicon international and lexicons there. Lexicology, the meaning of the word arrest is given in various dictionaries depending upon the circumstances in which the word may be used. There are numerous slang terms for being arrested throughout the UK. In British slang, here we go, this is my favourite part. What is British slang? Rhyming slang, apples and pears, alright, geezer, mince pies, eyes, things like this. So in slang talk, English language slang is originating in the UK, England, Britain, and also limited extent Anglophone countries such as the Republic of Ireland, South Africa, Australia, Canada and New Zealand, especially by British expats, alright? It is also used in the United States to a limited, and it goes on again, so search British slang if you want, and terminology. Lots of Barnsley, Sheffield has slang, Manchester has slang, Australia, Canada, Malacca is slang for Greek. If you know Malacca, if you know Pushti Malacca, then Yamas, so the Greeks, etc. So British slang, the term nicked is often synonymous with being arrested, and Nick, don't remember Saint Nick, Christmas, Nick, can also refer to a police station. And the term pinched is also common in the United States and France. The term collard, C-O-L-L-A-R-E-D, collared, but collard, is sometimes used. A collar, remember the dog collar of the cloth of the clergy there. And there's a reference from a dictionary I've never seen. Herail, Rene, James and Edwin A. Lovat, L-O-V-A-T-T, Dictionary of Modern Colloquial French, page 194. All right, you've also got lifted or picked up. If you've got any slang words for the old bill, the rozzers, the fuzz, the police, what have we got? Pinched, nicked, detained, abducted, you see, never kidnapped. These are, we need to know how we speak, what we speak, and what we're saying there. So then we've got procedures from India, United States, minor crimes and infractions, arrest for serious crimes, the powers of arrest. We've got the police and criminal evidence, PACE forms. We've got the arrest procedures. We've got lots of things to reference in the archives for you with the powers arrest. Our officer-agent interaction and so forth is based solely on the powers of the police force in England and Wales, arrests and arrests without warrants, with warrants. Hong Kong, China, Beijing, we're watching, we're seeing what's going on there. Chris Patton, the independence of shipping ports and Singapore, is it, and so forth, and who owns and the Temple BAR, offshore tax havens, foreign citizens. So if you want that link, let's start linking you up. We'll go to the comments afterwards. I am getting to the end, and then I will look at your comments and respond accordingly. And that's what I've just read from Wikipedia. This is now what I'm going to read from the black police. I say darker skinned, but for the correct definition of this, the evidence submitted by the National Black Police Association, and that would go as NBPA. This is where I'm reading from next. Too many pop-ups, got pop-ups on me pop-ups. Okay, so shout going out to all those that are defending rights and minorities. This is going to really give you some good boosting, all right? This is what we do. We don't covet it, and we don't keep it secret. You're going to look at that link. You're going to go to a Parliament Publications UK.com. And you're going to look at Hotel Charlie 1456, the Home Affairs Committee, written evidence by the NBPA. The National Black Police Association comprises of 46 affiliated associations established within police constabularies and agencies across England, Wales, Scotland and Northern Ireland. As a charity, our objectives are to promote not getting pins and needles as you do in your presentation. Yes, we're good. Cover the crotch. Right, where are we going? Our charity objectives to promote good race relations, equality of opportunity within the police services of the United Kingdom and wider community. They work with the interest of the UK police services as an integral partner to ensure equitable services. What? Okay. For all. Don't hear that word often. And for the black and minority staff whom we represent. We also advocate the needs and expectations of black and minority ethnic communities by delivering and supporting strategies and initiatives which have positive impact on all. The NBPA welcome the opportunity to contribute to this inquiry, particularly as we have a proven track record of supporting communities and policing at critical, difficult moments. Background. Riots and disturbances are not a new phenomenon in the context of British history. We have documented incidents from 1196 poverty riots through to the most recent incidents triggered in Tottenham following the shooting of Mark Duggan by the Metropolitan Police. Johnson, in his paper The Illusion and Inclusion, explains how riots and responses are cyclical. Terribly familiar cycle. The cycle goes something like this. There is a problem which is followed by a conference. The conference is followed by research. The research reinforces what we already know. See David Lammy and his reports. I kept thinking of Wolfie and David Wolfie. It's David Lammy and his reports from UK government. All right. Also to add on to this and what he's got to say about a policy written on the back of the fag packet for the Black Lives Matter. Nothing really happens. Hall, 1987, taken from Benyon and Solmos, 1987, page 45, reference to. Incidents of note are listed for information. So now we've got some chronological incidences from 1958. Violence breaks out in Notting Hill Gate, West London. 1978, the year man was born. Riots in Southall lead to death of Blair Peach at the hands of Special Patrol Group Sierra Papa Golf of the Metropolitan Police. 1981, more than 300 people are injured, including 200 police officers. Crowds hurl petrol bombs in Brixton, South London. That can never happen again. That makes my, Riots in Handsworth, 1985, break out when a black woman, Sherry Gross, is mistakenly shot by police who burst into her home. Look when when they started taking written interviews and statements from defendants, and look at the Birmingham Six and the allegations there with the Birmingham Six in the late 70s, and the introduction into interviewing a statement and not writing the statement out in a few hours later down the pub with your friends, the officers having a drink, writing out the statement you gave a few hours ago in the pub. That was an interesting thing that I found by accident, along with history, police, interviews, statements, and what was reformed in the late 70s. 1985, Broadwater Farm, PC Keith Blakelock is murdered with knives and machetes during rioting. R.I.P. and sorry for that. 1993, Stephen Lawrence murdered. Persistent campaign by Stephen's parents, Neville and Doreen Lawrence. I've paid homage to them before, and the work they've done leads to the Labour Party commissioning the public inquiry. As of 93, Lady Lawrence, as she's known now, a bit like Mr. Jerry Adams getting on that council of. They fight and fight, and they get taken into the wing of, in the name of. 1995, 3 nights of fighting causes more than 1 million worth of damage after gangs of Asian youths run amok in Manningham, Bradford. 1999, Lawrence Inquiry Report is then published. A total of 70 recommendations. This is what David Lammy is referring to as well in his recent reports regarding the Black Lives Matter. A total of 70 recommendations in 99 were published in that report. All in all, and concluded that the Metropolitan Police were institutionally racist. Pale, stale, white, male. 1999, so that will be 21 years ago, will it not? 2001 saw a large-scale disturbance erupt in Bradford, West Yorkshire. The battle lines were drawn along that of ethnicity. 2011, on April the 21st, there was a riot in the Stokes Croft area of Bristol following a raid by police on a squat named Telepathic Heights. I know nothing about that. No memory, no recollection, nothing. It's the first I've seen of it. 2011, again, the last one, riots in London and elsewhere following the shooting of Mark Duggan during a Trident operation. From the cycle, we reference a series of reports which contain numerous recommendations. Scarman, 1982, HMIC, thematic series, Winning the Race, Lawrence, 1999, Cantle, 2001, 2004, and 2005. The recommendations from these reports, if implemented and maintained, as Lammy said, would most likely have given us opportunity to demonstrate their effectiveness, but nothing was done. However, as we see the agenda changing, many of the recommendations which sought to challenge the status quo have been ignored, implemented, then phased out or identified as impractical or too costly, including things, but not limited to, ministerial priority of trust and confidence removed, a representative police service not achieved, a proportionate and fair use of stop and search, worse now than in 1999, greater police accountability for their actions, the IPCC you have overseeing those, allegedly, increased equality training, diversity units disbanded, diversity training is minimal. We will help with that. We don't mind working, when we say with the state. This is where we come in. Help us to help you. Her Majesty's Inspectorate of Constabulary, that's the HMIC if you was wondering, to have HM Inspectorate for Equality and Diversity. removed assistant HM Inspectorate for Race and Diversity. That's what they did, they removed the assistant. Community cohesion agenda, absent from policing policies. There's a lot of work to be doing. Corporate memory. In 1985, Sherry Gross was shot by police. Local residents went to Tottenham Police Station requesting answers. The information was not provided. Later that day, disturbances then grew into riots. That sounds pretty fair to me, but not so much what we have new technology now, but in the failure of our voices, in voices we are not heard, then surrounding the city of London playing ringer poses is my next idea, okay? Not so much rioting, there's a better way. No blood needs to be spilled, no petrol and firebombs, no smashing, no burning, no blood, no incarceration, no detainment, but a different way, under God, under the Creator. In 2011, Mark Duggan was shot by police. Local residents went to Tottenham Police Station requesting answers. That's a repeat then of something. No, yeah, the information was not provided. Later that day, disturbances grew into riots, a bit like 1985 then with Sherry Grace. And it is imperative in a policing environment as complex as London that it offers and staff have cognizance of the potential. I never see that word ever. Cognizance of the potential for incidents to escalate based on local factors, much like today what we're seeing and what we have seen with Black Lives Matters and the issue there with the knee on the neck and a mortality being affected. We are yet to hear how Operation Trident and CO19, Specialist Firearm Command Branch of the Metropolitan Police Services, came to be in a situation which resulted in the death of Mark Duggan, which we will not comment on. We are, however, concerned by the initial information that suggested there had been an exchange of gunfire, when it was known that the minutes before Duggan was tweeting that he was being followed by the feds. By the time corrective information had been officially released, it was too late for many who had surmised that the police had not told the truth once again. It is absolutely crucial that information provided by the police is accurate and timely. That's, you would say that's completely obvious, but it is not in this, it hasn't been. This prevents false representation and encourages the public to trust the content of the information provided. This is currently not the case, much like the royal family, the monarchy, Prince Andrew, Epstein, Weinstein, Hollywood, banks, the clergy, the cloth, and may be linked to public statements made by the police in the cases of Jean-Charles de Menzies and Ian Tomlinson, which were both found to be inaccurate. There's loads of stuff that really is, I'll just leave it there. The NBPA review in 2009, 10 years after Stephen Lawrence, incident, report, death, murder, etc., by Critchlow, identifies UK-wide concerns of the retrograde steps with regard to minority ethnic policing issue. So Black Lives Matter, you need to go back and use all of this and you will build up upon, and reluctance of the police service to accept that institutional racism continues to be an issue. The majority of respondents to the NBPA survey stated that trust and confidence on the part of black and minority ethnic, Bravo, Mikey, Echo, officers, staff and the BME community in their force remained problematic. This analysis paints a picture of inconsistency across the country in relation to the implementation of the Stephen Lawrence inquiry recommendations. Other peculiar stereotypical notions have emerged over time through various narratives. Most notably the notion that black, Asian and minority ethnic staff are treated more favourably than white members of staff. This appears to have contributed to the phenomenon of members of staff being subjected to unwarranted pressure, which particularly leads to the unlawful acts of discrimination. You could see how that's gone the wrong way in one way and the right way in others, but basically political correctness gone mad. Fear of lack of guidance, structure has led to, coupled with recent suggestions to delete the association of the police chief officers, the ACPO. Alpha Charlie, Papa Oscar, Equality, Diversity and Human Rights Business, the EDHR, Echo Delta Hotel Romeo, portfolio, to mainstream equality and to only formally consist with statutory bodies, i.e. not the NBPA, British Association for Women in Policing, or Gay Police Association. It is difficult to picture an inclusive police organisation that consistently has the trust of the public anywhere. Although the series of riots started with a darker skinned black man being shot, the events in totality were not about race. Although some reports and media responses have attempted to focus in these areas, we hear a terminology called profile. We've been profiled by the police and stopped and searched under police profiling. And you will hear terminologies as well mixed in with all of this. Neil, 2003, highlights how highly charged media reporting on race issues polarises opinion. We have community cohesion and the police there. I'm not going to go through all of that. You have the link, but the zero tolerance concept of zero tolerance means that things to many people, it means many things to many people, zero tolerance. You've got health crimes, zero tolerance. Not wearing a face mask will now constitute a health crime, which is comparable to not wearing a seatbelt under a Road Traffic Management Act, which is issued by default to your person under mandates of statutory assumption and presumption by Westminster, Congress, parliamentary measures and sub things like that. So why we have these areas, zero tolerance, many things to many people. The notion that any deviation from the rule of law would be dealt with robustly minimises the opportunity for officers and staff to use discretion or to treat individuals as individuals. So from the rule of law, you'll be dealt with robustly, minimises the opportunity for officers and staff to use discretion or to treat individuals as individuals. The popular belief was what this approach in New York was all positive. This is incorrect. During this period in 1997, Abner Luma, Haitian man, Haitian, I believe that's right, Haitiin, Jamaican, Trinidad, Tobago, Rastafari, Haitian, a Haitian man who was assaulted, brutalised and forcibly sodomised with the handle of a bathroom plunger by New York City police officers after being arrested outside a Brooklyn nightclub. That's 1997, alright? We believe that there is a real risk that unlawful actions, including excessive use of force by police officers, will become a part of everyday life for communities if a programme with the term zero tolerance was to be implemented. The excessive use of Section 60 search powers coupled with the very low arrest rate is indicative of a generalised random approach to detect crime that alienates innocent members of the public. Part of the fundamental aspects of the Peelian principles, P-E-E-L-I-A-N, you're going to get the link in a minute, and it will be included in the publications that we're going to incorporate this on moving on. So the fundamental aspects of the Peelian principles relates to the effectiveness of the police. Whether the police are effective is not measured on the number of arrests, but the lack of crime. So with regards to giving out tickets and penalty charge notifications for moving around on lockdown and having a quota to fill, giving out tickets, getting a quota of 10 a day, it's not how it should run. Above all else, an effective authority figure knows trust and accountability are paramount. A constable would know that. An officer works for different parameters. So hence Peel's most often quoted principle: the police are the public and the public are the police. And that comes from Lentz and Shares 2007, L-E-N-T-Z and C-H-I-R-E-S. Giving you some right work here, aren't I? I'm laying it all out for you with a spoon. Targeted intelligence-led operations with appropriate checks and balances will lead to greater support for policing and police activities. The firm policing and community activity that brought the disturbances to an end are highly supported by the NBPA. They acknowledge that expertise from police specialists from outside of the UK. We acknowledge, however, that a large number of external policing specialists operate in very different environments. Now that needs to be elaborated on extensively. Our police service operates in a consensual policing environment. Well, we'd argue different to that, wouldn't we now? And we can do effectively. In the main, without firearms, handguns or rifles, the tactics which can legitimately be employed in this environment may not necessarily translate when imported from places such as the USA. We do not automatically discount external advice. In fact, we welcome the concept of multi-point entry into the police service, which should improve minority representation, submission to Windsor. So here we are. We will work with them and collaborate. Darney and Kazia, 2011. Police service strength data shows an increase in minority ethnic officers by 0.2% since 2010. However, there is actually a quantitative reduction in minority ethnic officers from 2010. More worrying, the number of ACPO minority ethnic officers has reduced from 9 to 3 over the same period. Since its inception, the NBPA has and continues to support recruitment and progression initiatives, including the National Policing Improvements Agency, NPIA, extension of National Senior Careers Advisory Services, November Sierra Alpha Charlie Alpha Sierra, support to chief inspectors, supporting the high potential development schemes, HPDS, through circulations, executive meetings and advertisements on the NBPA website. The shockingly low representation of BME women in policing is highlighted in the Gittins report from 2004, reinforced by the fact there has only ever been one BME female officer in ACPO in the history of policing. This is quite frankly a disgrace. The public, especially young people, need to see role models within policing that they can identify with and see that they too can succeed with that environment. We police, we are policing, we are self-policing, we are governing, self-governing, and we are a regulatory authority that is going to say hello very, very soon with this put into, and we need help with it. If this is lighting up your shell likes and you are loving what you're hearing, we're going to get ready to put all this into some kind of utilisation effectively alongside our common law defence lines, all right? So the homogeneity of the police service limits the nature and scope of effective policing. The ability to function in diverse environments can be and has been compromised by the lack of diversity. Surveillance, counter-terrorism, vice investigations, test purchasing, police corruption, covert operations and Operation Trident. So the NBPA response to the riots in 2011 in support of the policing of the initial disturbances, the NBPA publicly denounced the violence, circulating a press release to the media 2011 Tottenham riots. This was closely followed by a roundtable discussion with local BPAs in London, Bristol, West Midlands, Manchester and Liverpool, and it was clear to us that the trouble was likely to move beyond the capital. And they've got points here like early liaison with chief officers in force, community meetings and preventative solutions. Hello community, setting up the community, that's where it begins. Youth programs, access to cascade information to prevent young people being swept up in the disturbances. We have the introduction of a similar 1980s youth training incentive paradigm coming back into play now in light of the Great Depression that we're seeing, not since the light of, or even since ever, or even in the war times. So we're looking to work in the communities and outlay our publications and work with rank and file, young people, communities, debt, fear, misery, shadow complex. We're looking to set up a trust in every city in Britain, every capital city, and move that way. If you're interested and you'd like to work with us along this kind of all lives matter, alongside taking a knee to Black Lives Matter, darker skinned lives matter, going back to biblical connotations of the people being put onto boats as slaves. Special purpose vehicle can be a boat, that can look at slavery, trading souls with birth certificates, so we can all join together and we can use the momentum of darker skinned Black Lives Matter, and we can come together. I did do a shout out to Sikhs and Hindus and mosques and community leaders, and to let us consider coming in and having a chat with you and strengthening the community. We're looking to build resources, and we're willing to talk about Allah, Muhammad, PB, OH, all religions, all books, all gods, all beliefs and systems we'd like to incorporate in a community level and come together as one under the quanta, simple, and respect. And much like in the city of Alexandria, and the scholars that were studying, such as Egyptian, Persian, Greek, and etc., all under one roof, pre Judea Christianity, and Muslims and Egyptians, and Greeks, Egyptians, Christians, scholars, etc. We could come back to them times. The return of yeah, it's incredible. And the stories and the lineages and the times we're bringing out. So community is the key there. These regional meetings allowed other organisations, to get strength. So youth programs, social media used to discourage antisocial behaviour and criminal behaviour. We'd like to save the officers' pensions. We'd like to work with you, let you know that you're not legally trained, but you're a police officer, but you don't know legal parameters. You know policy and rules. We know law. You don't know law. We know legal and law. We know Constitution, Maritime, Admiralty, UCC, Ecclesia, canons, and they know nothing. So we need to fill in the deficit. They've been put into a battle which they are basically naked, and that's not on. The state and the church are driving man and the officers together. The redaction of the middle class, the redaction of constables, the management of officers, somewhat within the Q movement and the Anons and the international Vatican, monarchy and federal attention. It seems that the Illuminati seems to be managed through those routes, and the attention those are getting, the arrests, the adrenochrome, the paedophilia, Buckingham Palace. Oh Lord, now is the time. It seems that we're seeing evidences to say, this is your Nasara Jasara, by the way. This is one of the Nasara Jasaras happening as we speak. So they would suggest that having social media blocked is not the best way forward. They recognise the importance of such a decision and would welcome this to be done on a voluntary basis by the service providers. What have I got to Pelian? Let me control an F, because I'm wrapping up and going to the Pelian code now. So part of the fundamental aspects of the Pelian principles relates to the effectiveness of the police. Whether the police are effective is not measured by the number of arrests. Now go to the 8 principles of Lord Bingham and look at what he put out there. But on the lack of crime, Vienna, very, very calm place to live. Check Vienna's stats out. Why do they have quite a lot of business done in Vienna? Very happy, very calm, not very protests are low, crime is low. Just a random place like Switzerland that often doesn't get mentioned for the right reasons. Vienna. But on the lack of crime, all right, that's how the police are measured, not by profits, not by targets, not by numbered, but by how the crime is. Above all else, that should be an effective authority figure knows trust and accountability are paramount. Hence, Peel's most often quoted principle: the police are the public, and the public are the police. So you have that link, all right. You've got your arrest link, yay. Now we're going to the Pelian principles. Again, you can find this many places, but I'm just going to put it onto from Wikipedia into the chat. Okay, then they'll be going into the description if the agents remove the comments. So the Pelian principles summarise the ideas that Sir Robert Peel developed to define an ethical police force. The approach expressed in these principles is commonly known as policing by consent. So when you want to argue that we're governed by consent, we're policed by consent, we don't live in a police state, under human international rights, humans have the rights not to be afforded, recognised in front of the law as a person, and we are not in a police state. Grant Shapps the other week, BBC Radio 4, 8:45 a.m, quoting Theresa May, quoting. So we have a lot to go on, and when we need to quote, like we found out, the Clearfield Doctrine has nothing to do with courts being dissolved. In this game, in this movement, in this renaissance, you need to check everything I say. You need to check everything given to you. Radcon 2, Danny Knight, and whoever else's name was on that document we were sent and we started to look at. Once we tried to source it, we couldn't find the relevant references. We was getting DUNS and Bradstreet numbers for businesses, corporations, police, governments, etc. We was looking at companies' house registrations. We were looking at Securities Exchange Commissions, and we looked at negotiable instruments and courts and money, settlement, transfer, offset, and that's when we found, through the instruments, the Clearfield Trust, which then argued and brought through case law the Clearfield Doctrine. That means nothing about courts being dissolved. So you must check, you must double check. Do not believe in this game everything that you are told and given, because as Radcon 2's name was on there, I will just let the Facebook world know that we found once again, like with the getoutofdebtfree.org and the mixed jurisdiction within their notices and language and principles and instruments, a confused area, and that was to do with courts, government consent, and they're not dissolved as such. They're registered and listed as businesses, and they run in a way that we've brought to you. So policing and courts is an area loosely there. I brought out that in the 60s, the Privy Council was contacted by Canada because of women and rights and access, and women going into the law, woman not being recognised, but man being in the law. The Privy Council and their involvement into amendments to Canadian law to involve women in the 60s. So, the Pelian principles, policing by consent, it's all ethical. It pulls into this model of policing. Officers, it mentions here, but we say constables, all right, and officers are regarded as citizens in uniform. You're not a king for the day. You're not anybody other than a citizen in a uniform. They exercise their powers to police their fellow citizens, okay, with the implicit consent of their fellow citizens. Now, as man-made government invented persons, and persons and law and codes and statute and orders and acts and bills, you've got, as I've said previously, the mandatory default ruling of the assumptive, presumptive by default from Westminster to your person. But that's the consent. When we say consent, you will say, instead of no comment, you will say no consent. No comment is a deferred answer. They can put down you've answered. No consent means no contract, no consent. Your paperwork will proceed. The paperwork that you've done, I refer you to my paperwork. Wait till my attorney at law, paralegal arrives, and they will bring the appropriate paperwork to answer your questions. I do not answer questions. Yeah, it's not rude. Anything you do say may be used in giving in evidence against you. So we have paperwork. Our paperwork will proceed as executives of the estate and trustees, powers of attorney, last will and testament, and advocates coming in at law to argue with you. So the policing by the consent from the citizens to the citizens indicates the legitimacy of policing, and that's the extent to which members of the public view the police as legitimate, often measured in terms of the public's willingness to obey and cooperate with the police. We had the police and friction, Dominic Cummings and his travelling to go and sign a deal with his dodgy eyes with Glaxo, GSK, and then him and his, did you see why he went there? Now, it wasn't anything to do with testing his eyes. Managed to sign, allegedly, a deal with somebody with dodgy eyes, coming on the news there with Gove and the First Lord of the Treasury, Boris, to say, yes, this is an admission of a road traffic management offence. This is an admission, a public testimony on national news on a level with witnesses, crimes there, offences, under common law, they had the potential to do harm. So policing by consent, the public's respect, the willingness to cooperate. The police saying, well, the public aren't very willing to adhere to lockdown measures because of what Cummings and others are doing, which is a flouting of the law. So we have to meet in the middle with love and respect and honour, and not one rule for one and one rule for the other. Do as I say, not as I do. It reminds me of my mum when I was little, getting a scotch and a slipper or whatever it was at the time. So the cooperation with the police legitimacy is linked to that degree of public support, and we support them, we love them, and we are recognising that they and us are in danger, and we need to have a meeting in the middle, which doesn't involve any repetition of those years from the 50s to the 2011, starting with and the officers and the man's getting burnt and scraped. So in the early 19th century, Britain attempts, not the UK, not England, Britain, not Great Britain, but Britain, all right? In the early 19th century, Britain attempts by the government to set up the police force for London met with a lot of opposition. M-E-T, as in it met with a lot of opposition. So in the early 19th century, Britain, that's where it is, it's early 19th century Britain, and attempts by the government to set up a police force for London, they was met with a lot of opposition. It's not very well written here, but I'll try it. People, were suspicious of the idea of a large and possibly armed police force, and it feared that it could be used to suppress, protest or support unpopular rule. Since 1793, Britain had been at war with France, home of the best known, best organised and best paid police force at the time, okay? Hello. As well as a secret and political police force. And many Britons were uncomfortable with any police force's association with France, the Châtel, were not happy. Most people did not think it was the job of the national government to set up and control a police force, and thought it should be under local authority. And whilst you're researching and making notes and looking at that, look at the post office, the protection of the post office, and whom used to go around protecting the letters and the checks with the post office, and look into the post offices, as we had the allegations of the postmasters and so forth last year, and the presumptive guilt that was assigned. Allegedly pregnant mums were locked up with no evidence, accused of theft as postmasters that wasn't guilty, that shouldn't have been locked up, especially being pregnant. The rule ignored the law in that case, all right? That's where we're at, my lordships. And the establishment is going to hear from us and start correcting, or whether the police are effective is not measured by the number of arrests, by the lack of control, by the lack of crime. The concept of professional policing was taken up by Robert Peel when he became Home Secretary in 1822. Peel's Metropolitan Police Act of 1829 established a full-time professional and centrally organised police force for the Greater London area. We know a song about that, don't we, Kevin? Known as the Metropolitan Police. The Metropolitan Police Service, that's the MPS, formerly and still commonly known as the Metropolitan Police, and informally as the Met Scotland Yard, or the Yard. The yards are lines, aren't they? Lines. Yes, follow the line, right in the lines, phone line, shipping line. The Yard is the territorial police force responsible for law enforcement in the Met Police District. The Peelian principles described by the philosophy that Sir Robert Peel developed to define an ethical police force. The principles traditionally ascribed to Peel state that whether the police are effective is not measured on the number of arrests but the lack of crime, the harmony in society. Above all else, an effective authority figure, trusts and accountability are paramount. Hence Peel's most often quoted principle that the police are the public and the public are the police. If we all followed the rules of common law, we wouldn't need police. We'd manage it ourselves. That last bit there, the police are the public and the public are the police, reminds me of the saying by Hippocrates, let food be your medicine. If you ate the right foods, it would be your medicine. And let medicine be your food. So eating the right foods means that you'll never need medicine as food. So the police, the common law officers, the sheriffs, that's what we all are. And that's a great saying. The police are the public. Common law officer, sheriff, common law constable, common law witness and ambassador for Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is used for those that want to be near and close to him, that is known to is Christ. Jesus, Messiah, Lord and Saviour, different labels, titles, fixtures, and Lord Messiah, Lord Saviour, Christ Jesus, Jesus Christ. So Christ is given. We followed Christ and we had Christ with us, a Christ-like consciousness that the Judeo-Christian has put to us, then this wouldn't be needed now. Just a thought. I know in the Ten Commandments there's nothing about rape, pillaging and such things as what child abuse and things that Christopher Hitchens goes on about, but we will write them in. An amendment to the secular Old Testament, New Testament codification of man is where we're at, using all of the scripts, Egypt, Babel, legalese, quantum, and then going back to the text, the lost text. It will be redone again, and it's all happening right now. It's a bit messy and blurry, but we have a lot over here for Anglo to latch upon, and we've got a lot that we're going to publish and put down. If the videos get deleted, it doesn't matter, because we've got everything that's important in our library resource vault on my hard drive with Kevin, with Greg, on various servers, on various data, Department of Defence encrypted external drives. Things are backed up and put away, so there is no losing of this again, and it will be the legacy that we create for our unborn lineage, so they don't have to go through this. Alright, so above all else, an effective authority figure knows trust and accountability are paramount, hence that quoted principle. The Met police officers were often referred to as bobbies. After Sir Robert Peel, Bobby Peel, that's where you get Bobby from, as I mentioned before, and they are regarded as the first modern police force. So throughout the history of criminal justice, evolving forms of punishment, added rights for offenders and victims, and policing reforms, getting away with the handout and the molten metal being put into, political ideas and economic conditions. Today we were regarded as the first modern police force and became a model for the police forces in many countries, Hong Kong, China, Tokyo, Bangkok, etc., Asia in general. They've taken ideas from London City, they have, the bobbies, and many police forces in countries around the world, particularly across the British Empire, the colonial states, all right, the colonies, and the United States. I won't give you the references for that. The 9 principles of policy, of policing now, all right, 9 principles were set out in the general instructions, in addition to what I've given you from Lord Bingham here. These were before that, issued to every new police officer in the Metropolitan Police from 1829. Although Peel discussed the spirit of some of these principles in his speeches and other communications, the historians Susan Lentz and Robert Shares found no proof that he compiled a formal list. The Home Office has suggested that the instructions were probably written not by Peel himself, but by Charles Rowan, R-O-W-A-N, and Richard Mayne, the Joint Commissioners of the Metropolitan Police when it was founded. And there are 9 principles which you'll find there: to prevent crime and disorder as an alternative to their repression by military force and severity of legal punishment; to recognise always the power of the police to fulfil their functions and duties is dependent on public approval of their existence, actions and behaviour, and on their ability to secure and maintain public respect. To recognise always that to secure and maintain the respect and approval of public means also the securing and willing cooperation of the public in the task of securing observance of the laws. It's never easy to read, is it? To recognise always that the extent to which the cooperation of the public can be secured diminishes proportionately the necessity of the use of physical force and compulsion for achieving police objectives. Objective. To seek and preserve public favour by not pandering to public opinion, but by constantly demonstrating absolutely impartial service to law, in complete independence of policy, and without regard to the justice or injustice of the substance of individual laws, by ready offering of individual service and friendship to all members of the public. Ship, friendship, services we politely decline and, don't want the services there. Without regard to their wealth or social standing, by ready exercise of courtesy and friendly good humour, and by ready offering of individual sacrifice in protecting and preserving life. Number 6 of 9. To use physical force only when the exercise of persuasion, advice and warning is found to be insufficient to obtain public cooperation to an extent necessary to secure observance of law or to restore order, and to use only minimum degree of physical force which is necessary on any particular occasion for achieving a police objective. Number 6 is massive, and we're going to move on to be further extensively discussed. To maintain at all times a relationship with the public that gives reality to the historic tradition that the police are the public and the public are the police. The police being only members of the public who are paid to give full-time attention to duties which are incumbent on every citizen and in the interests of the community welfare and existence. The public trust, a breach of the peace, the public obligations of common law. With common law obligations, you're obligated not to go out and do certain things. 7 is massive and will be covered extensively in the second level. 8 of 9. To recognise always the need for strict adherence to police executive functions and to refrain from even seeming to usurpation the powers of the judiciary of avenging individuals of the state and of authority, alternatively judging guilt and punishing the guilty, and to recognise always that the test of the police efficiency in the absence of crime and disorder and not the visible evidence of police action in dealing with them. Then we've got a big paragraph of policing by consent. I'm going to leave all of that out. That's going to be extensively covered by SPL's merit level and key competence Masters Guild second level. So I realise it's an hour and a half, 90 minutes before Mr. Wobbly is coming out and being extracted. We're going to have a chance to catch up later on. We'll get Kevin in. I'm going to say thank you for the comments, the 15 likes. I see that there are 16 of you in that room chatting away. I'm looking for your comments, so I'm going to look at them retrospectively when we cast again, maybe later or tomorrow. I'm at home tomorrow recovering from the gaping hole that will be there. I will be Pirate David. Aha! I'm going to take FPV's greeting and use that for the next several months until I get it sorted. Happily getting it sorted. Hopefully you will see me in a few days. My speech will be alright. And thank you to everyone that's contacting emails. We're very busy. AD, you're a legend. Thank you for the daily text, if not many daily texts I've been looking at. Robbie Williams and Charles Ward. I've got some videos on the .com. I've just posted Charles Ward, Denise Boland, Roundtable, The Storm is Coming, and thank you, AD. Trespass on rights and property. I'm not sure what's happening along the questions we're getting. I can't answer about mortgages and Benicia. I'm seeing Robbie Williams popping up. I can't handle quote on Dave of the Witcher clan and what's happening there. I don't know any information on that. I can't quote on Common Law Court Australia, John Smith's. We can only quote and say what we're affiliated with, knowledgeable on doing, and I'm very happy with what we're getting email wise, contact wise, feedback wise. We're getting a lot of praise and not much grumbles. We have a lot of documents being tested, some very powerful conditional acceptance for the safeguarding partnership team. So bear with us, stand by. Thank you all. I'm going to say some names. I'm going to get ready for my extraction later. Check on Casablanca. That would be my slang for Yanka. Charlotte, Minister of the Hermit Elkan. Hello. Posh Paul, you got messages being retracted. All right, no worries. Thank you. Hello. Comments I'll look at later. I see some passion, some emotion there. Thank you. Comments. Here we go. Stuart, Minister. Fly, yes, I thank you, Fly, for your lovely praise there. After all this is done, we'd like some feedback from you. How have you found Kevin and I? Keep all of your stuff private. Do not say a word. But if you could give us some praise and grumble on that notice that we're testing out, that would be appreciated later down the line. Jack Black, hello there. Thank you for your time. Thank you for the information, feedback. What in the world? What? I saw Kevin was there, Mr. Dav, Anders. Alright, see, it's a bit quiet. Things look like they're getting back to normal. We've got loads more to bring you on top of this. We're doing it in a structured, organised, printed, referenceable, concise, articulated, slow, all the things we haven't been. Fourth year this year in December of the foundational educational trust being established. So we've done a lot in them 4 years altogether since 05 for me. Nearly 15 years going on, just under 15 years of research, 7 years intense. We've got a lot to bring you, the scholars, the masters, the publications, the lords, the history, the lineages, hundreds of years, pre-gnosis of antiquities. So we're going to collate, all right, that's your update. It's way overdue. That was Saturday's update. It was going to be extended, given to you. It's been cancelled because of the pain. I'm not in the right state of mind. I'm going out in the day, earning a living and battling on. So we've got a lot more to give you. This was concise and objectified. I know it went way back and it's a bit scattered, but so you should be used to that by now from us, from I can't, Saxon Coburg, Windsor, Battenberg, where monotheistic, incredible, really is. An honour and a privilege from I to you. Summer statement, we have hardly touched on that. Yeah, the duties, the stamps. This is focused on your rights, your entitlement, your law, your crimes, your offences and your rules, and the publications that we've got for you. I hope you enjoy. Further down the line, Kevin is managing the Facebook area and certain things. You will look at Mike, M-I-K-E space O-X-M-A-U-L. That would be Mike Oxmall. Okay, I said that very well. That's who you'll see managing SPL's trust on Facebook there that we have. We've had an insurgence of requests, gone up from 300 to 431 in a few weeks, so thank you for that. That's the free domain that we'll put a link in for you now for the group on the tube, so you can find us there. We have obviously the .com, which you know where we are, same place, but on the domain of the internet, our special purpose vehicle. That's your Facebook link for us. All of the links will be put into the comments later. I will be gathering up Kevin. We'll be encompassing more on this. We've got Shadow Dynamics to have a chat with. Josh X I've spoken to recently. He's well, looking well. The family's well over there in Portugal. I'll get a hangout with him. I have a new webcam and mic, night vision, 1080p, singing and dancing, little separate microphone there. We'll see how that works out with the new applications while I'm waiting to upgrade the laptop. We got a man called Hotep Sekmi, Keith, and we're going to get on with him and Kevin I. That would go well with the Egyptians and the UCC and the value and the court, so much to come in the form of. I'd like to get Santos back, and Jordan Maxwell would be incredible, talking about many things here, what we're bringing to you, and that's it. So thank you, much love, thanks for your time, thanks for watching. I'd like to share this any way you think relevant, let them be introduced to us, the evidence. This is essential for Dark Lives Matter. All lives matter to us. Assets, children, offspring, fruit of our loins, white, black, all creeds, all colours. We consider this one house, one family, one movement, one conscious, one goal, and there is one direction to go here, and we've got a lot happening. Thank you all for everything and more. The corrections are an honour to do. Constantine, 4th dynasty, 4th century, 3rd, 4th century needs correction, and the premise of such things as Da Vinci or Brown mentality, writing the pagan deathbed, Constantine, councils, nicer, Versailles, something I need to edit and put in to be compared to. So again, a pleasure to go back and amend certain things with the canonization of the Bible and how the Bible, New Testament, was canonized, and the canons themselves, and when they were put, where they were put, which ties us in with the lost books, the 5 books of Thomas, and etc. So we've only just scratched the surface. If you want to help, we need help. We need scholars, initiates, ambassadors, witnesses, diplomats. If you know Christ and you say that and you know him, and you act with him, you come with Jesus as Christ, we'd like you to say hello. If you've got issues with registration and certificates and titles and rights and access to, and the worry you've got, we'll do our best. And we can't answer for others, they need to answer for themselves. But thank you for putting in the questions. Your questions help us move forward, randomly aligning with. So we'll do some more updates. I'm going to go and prepare. I'm going to get in something not white for the blood spatter that may happen. Let's once again say hello and goodbye to goodbye. It's been middle of March that happened, so I'm happy to say, I will be happy to say goodbye to that tooth and have an extraction. You will be seeing Pirate David. Aha. Knowing me, knowing you. I'm going to steal it from FPV, and I'll get the gang back later. The gang masters, the fam, and we will we'll move on. Showing my yellowy teeth there. Recession of the gum, that looks horrific. Thank you all. Much love. Ciao bello. Rights, entitlement, laws, crimes, offences and rules. Hello Adi from where you are. I'm actually still live on a video. Would you like to say hello to the scribes before I end the cast? And then we'll chat, my good man.
Hello scribes.
Live
Freedom.
Any messages for them?
Yeah.
Go on, bro.
For them that aren't sure of the standing and what's actually occurring, there's quite a good show called The Casanova Show, The Power of Jurisdiction. Very informative, even for numpling sheeple.
Like us. All right, let me end the cast. Stay there.
Indeed.
Thank you all. Must go. Ciao bello. Much love.